The 2026 Royal Rumble arrives, and the atmosphere is electric. 14 participants have already entered, and then it's time for number 15. The typical Rumble countdown begins. But midway, it turns into Jericho's signature countdown. The arena goes dark, and then the music hits. Pyro goes off and the place explodes as Chris Jericho emerges through the smoke, arms spread wide, soaking in the thunderous ovation. For the next 30 minutes, Jericho reminds everyone exactly what made him a legend. He eliminates 3 competitors. He survives near eliminations. The clock keeps ticking, and somehow the Ayatollah of rock and rolla is still standing. Jericho makes it to the final 7, but just as he eliminates Xavier Woods and turns back, he's eliminated by none other than LA Knight. The following night on Raw, Jericho tells the WWE Universe that he's happy to be back.
Raw is Jericho!
And later that night, Jericho defeats JD McDonough to qualify for the Elimination Chamber match for the World Heavyweight Championship. At the Chamber, Jericho enters first alongside World Heavyweight Champion CM Punk and makes it all the way to the Final 4. It's Punk, Knight, Breaker, and Jericho. The veteran battles with everything he has, but when Knight catches him with a BFT, it's over. Jericho is eliminated. He slowly exits the chamber as the fans applaud his performance. But then, something shifts in Jericho's eyes. Y2J slides back into the chamber and lays out Knight with the Judas effect as the megastar crumples to the mat. Braun Breaker capitalizes and eliminates Knight, but Jericho isn't done. Jericho locks in the walls of Jericho on Knight as referees rush to the ring to escort Jericho out of the chamber. The babyface run is over. Chris Jericho is back to doing what he does best, and LA Knight's road to WrestleMania will never be the same again. The week after Elimination Chamber, Raw opens with LA Knight storming to the ring, microphone in hand and fury in his eyes. Knight doesn't waste time with pleasantries. He calls Jericho a jealous has-been who couldn't stand watching a real megastar shine. Knight says Jericho talks about being grateful and loving the business, but the moment someone younger and better gets their moment, the old man has to ruin it. Jericho retaliates and tells Knight that he attacked him because Knight represents everything wrong with WWE today. Jericho says WWE superstars today are all about catchphrases with no substance to back it up. He says Knight is a microphone champion who crumbles when the lights get bright. Jericho says he did Knight a favor by exposing him as a fraud before he embarrassed himself on an even bigger stage. The match is made official for WrestleMania, but for the next 6 weeks, the mind games continue between the two, with Jericho claiming that Knight is all hype, while Knight states that Jericho is a washed-up has-been. At WrestleMania, it's a seesaw battle as Knight unleashes his power and agility, while Jericho uses every dirty trick in the book. In the closing moments, Jericho locks in the walls of Jericho in the center of the ring, but Knight manages to roll him up and defeat Chris Jericho clean at WrestleMania. But Jericho isn't done. The night after WrestleMania, Knight challenges CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of Raw. The megastar is on fire, and the momentum is on his side as Knight sets up Punk for the BFT. However, before Knight can hit the move, Jericho walks out onto the stage with a steel chair, and the distraction is all Punk needs. The champion recovers and retains with a GTS as Knight stares daggers at Jericho. The following week, Pierce announces the rematch for Jericho versus Knight at Backlash. This time, there's a different energy. Knight is consumed with rage, wanting to hurt Jericho for costing him the championship. But rage makes you sloppy. Jericho, on the other hand, wrestles smart. He targets Knight's blind spots. He uses the ropes for leverage, and when the referee is out of position, Jericho pokes Knight directly in the eyes and hits him with a codebreaker to steal the victory. But Knight gets the last laugh the very next night on Raw.
Yeah!
In a fatal 4-way #1 contenders match against Jericho, Jey Uso, and Bronson Reed, Knight overcomes all 3 competitors to earn another shot at CM Punk's championship. The feud between Knight and Jericho is over, but Chris Jericho's mission is just beginning. For 2 weeks, Chris Jericho disappears from WWE television, but his next feud changes the landscape of WWE and the career of one of the biggest names in the company. Seth Rollins returned on the night after WrestleMania and immediately targeted Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed to get his revenge. While Rollins was able to get a win over Reed, but he hasn't been able to beat Breaker yet.
Where's Seth Rollins?
Every match between the two ends with Breaker's power overwhelming Rollins' experience and resilience. 3 weeks after Backlash, Rollins faces Breaker once again on Raw. Rollins throws everything at the younger star, but Breaker counters the stomp once again and puts Rollins away with a spear. However, as Breaker leaves the ring and Rollins slowly makes it back to his feet, the lights go out. When the lights turn back on, Jericho is standing behind Rollins and lays him out with the Judas effect. The following week, Jericho explains his actions and says that watching Rollins' downward spiral into mediocrity has been painful to witness. Jericho sees a younger version of himself in Seth, a revolutionary who changed the business but now can't win when it matters most. He calls Rollins soft and comfortable and berates him for letting the fire inside him die. Jericho says that the reason Rollins never manages to beat Breaker is because he keeps holding back and doesn't let his dark side take over. I'm not your enemy, Seth. I'm your wake-up call. I know you can reach the top of WWE again, but you fail every time because you don't have the killer instinct anymore. You've forgotten what made you dangerous.
You come for me again. Same thing's happening, big boy.
Jericho tries to get inside Rollins' head, and maybe there's truth behind his words, but Rollins tells Jericho to stay out of his business. Over the next few weeks, Jericho becomes Rollins' shadow. He stalks him backstage, he interrupts his interviews, and every time he delivers the same message: embrace your dark side or fade into irrelevance. Rollins refuses to listen, but the match is made official for Clash in Paris. For over 15 minutes, Jericho and Rollins put on a clinic in front of the passionate French crowd as Rollins and Jericho match each other move for move. Towards the end, Jericho grabs a chair from ringside, slides it to Rollins, turns his back at Rollins, and screams at Seth to hit him with it. The crowd chants for Seth to pick it up, but the architect hesitates. That split-second hesitation costs Rollins as Jericho lunges forward and connects with a codebreaker that seals the match. As Y2J celebrates his victory, Rollins lies in the ring, staring at the lights with the haunting realization that maybe Jericho is right. However, the weeks following Paris, the story takes a darker turn as Jericho makes it personal with Rollins. After Clash in Paris, Jericho's tone shifts from a villain to almost like a parent. He tells Rollins that he's not trying to destroy him. He's trying to save him. Every attack, every loss, it's all to push Seth to rediscover the ruthless edge that once made him stand on top of the wrestling world. Rollins tries to ignore the mind games, but a week later, Jericho crosses all limits. 2 weeks before Night of Champions, Becky Lynch competes in a match against Lyra Valkyria on Raw. Becky wins clean, celebrating with the crowd as her music plays. But then, the lights cut out. When they return, the Painmaker Chris Jericho stands in the ring behind Becky. The man turns around just as Jericho's boot connects with her midsection. Before anyone can react, Jericho spins and delivers a devastating Judas effect that leaves Becky unconscious in the center of the ring. Officials flood the ring, but Jericho simply leaves through the crowd, showing no remorse. Becky is stretchered out and taken to a local hospital as Seth Rollins' hands shake with rage with tears of fury streaming down his face. The following week on Raw, Jericho comes out to address his actions, but before he can say a word, Rollins appears on the Tron. The mood is different as the Visionary is in a dark, abandoned room with his back turned to the camera. Chris, you wanted this. You pushed and pushed until something inside me broke. You wanted me to embrace the darkness? Congratulations. You got it. But be careful what you wish for, because the Seth Rollins you're about to face isn't the man you've been tormenting. This guy doesn't hesitate. This guy doesn't have limits. Rollins turns towards the camera with a Joker-like makeup as his eyes burn with an intensity the WWE Universe hasn't seen in years. Night of Champions, Hell in a Cell. One of us walks out, the other goes to hell. The match is made official, and when the cell lowers around the ring, both men's careers are changed forever. Jericho emerges as the Painmaker, his face painted, wielding a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. But Rollins is different too. His gear is dark, his face painted with smears resembling a twisted smile, channeling the broken madness of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. This isn't the Architect or the Visionary. This is something new, something completely different, something dangerous. For 30 minutes, they wage war inside the cell. Weapons are used. Finishers are thrown. Both men absorb punishment that would end careers. The Painmaker wraps barbed wire around Rollins' throat. The new Dark Rollins laughs through the pain and drives Jericho through a table. Jericho locks in the walls of Jericho, but Rollins keeps laughing through the pain like a maniac. In the final moments, Rollins fights back and wraps a steel chair around Jericho's head. He places Jericho's head on the steel steps, climbs to the top rope, positioning himself for the stomp that could end not just the match, but Jericho's career. The crowd holds its breath, but Rollins hesitates. Even in his darkest form, he can't bring himself to potentially end Jericho's career. And that's when Jericho looks up at him and screams, "Do it! Prove you have what it takes!" Rollins leaps from the top rope. The stomp connects with the chair wrapped around Jericho's skull. The sound echoes throughout the arena like a gunshot. 3 seconds later, Seth Rollins has defeated the Painmaker. Medics rush the ring as Rollins sits in the corner, staring at what he's done. Slowly, he crawls over to Jericho, who's barely conscious but somehow smiling. Rollins helps the broken legend to his feet. The two two warriors stand face to face as the crowd rises to their feet. Rollins shakes Jericho's hand and embraces him in the middle of the cell as the show comes to an end. The mentor has succeeded in awakening the monster. This new, unhinged version of Rollins successfully defeats Breakker at their next encounter, but Jericho, he's nowhere to be seen. Almost a month passes with no sign of Chris Jericho. The Hell in a Cell match took everything out of both men, but while Rollins continues his pursuit of gold, Jericho remains absent from WWE programming. Social media speculation runs rampant. Some fans wonder if the injuries from Night of Champions were too severe. Others question whether Jericho's final run has quietly come to an end. But 2 weeks before Money in the Bank, all the questions are answered. Raw opens with a video package highlighting Jericho's legendary career. The crowd murmurs with anticipation, sensing Y2J's return. And then his music hits. Chris Jericho walks out to a thunderous ovation, looking healthier than he has in months. The smile on his face is genuine as he soaks in the reaction from the WWE universe. But before he can say a single word, another familiar theme interrupts. Dominik Mysterio struts out onto the stage with the Intercontinental Championship draped over his shoulder. Dirty Dom has held the IC title for ages, successfully defending against everyone placed in front of him, yet the crowd still refuses to give him respect. Dom grabs a microphone, his voice dripping with disdain. Of course the great Chris Jericho shows up, does absolutely nothing, and you people lose your minds. I've been Intercontinental Champion for longer than this guy's career has been relevant, and you still treat me like garbage. The crowd's boos intensify, but Dominik continues. You want to know what really pisses me off? This guy can put on some stupid face paint, call himself the Painmaker, and suddenly everyone acts like he's the greatest thing ever. Meanwhile, I'm out here every single week carrying this company on my back, and I get nothing but disrespect. Jericho's smile fades slightly as Dom descends the ramp. You know what, Chris? I'm sick of living in everyone's shadow. My dad's shadow. Your shadow. Every legend who walks through that curtain gets treated better than the actual champions on this roster. So I'm going to do something about it. Dom enters the ring and stands face to face with Jericho. I'm officially the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, Chris. And if these ungrateful fans won't recognize it, I'll cement my legacy by ending the career of the man who's held that title more times than anyone else. You. Before Jericho can respond, Dom swings the title wildly at Jericho, but the veteran sees it coming from a mile away. Jericho ducks and connects with a picture-perfect codebreaker that leaves the champion flat on his back. Jericho's music hits again as he stands over Dominik's body, staring down at the Intercontinental Championship. At first, Jericho doesn't acknowledge Dom's challenge. In backstage interviews, he laughs it off, calling Dominik a spoiled child desperate for validation. But Dirty Dom won't let it go. The following week, Dom costs Jericho a Money in the Bank qualifying match by attacking him during the bout. The week after that, Dom interferes in a #1 contenders match for the World Heavyweight Championship, causing Jericho to lose again. Each time, Dom stands over Jericho with the IC title raised high, taunting his legacy. Finally, Jericho snaps. 2 weeks before SummerSlam, Jericho storms into Adam Pearce's office and demands a match with Dominik Mysterio at SummerSlam for the Intercontinental Championship. But there's a twist. If Jericho loses, his career is over. It's title versus career, and the biggest party of the summer just got hotter. At SummerSlam, Jericho and Dom go back and forth for almost 20 minutes. Jericho shows his veteran instincts, while Dom relies on his youth and agility. Dom goes for a frog splash, but Jericho moves. Jericho locks in the walls of Jericho in the center of the ring, but Dom refuses to tap out. Towards the end, Dom grabs the Intercontinental Championship and swings at Jericho, but Y2J ducks and hits him with the codebreaker to become a 10-time Intercontinental Champion. Weeks following SummerSlam, Chris Jericho embarks on the most exciting championship reign of his career. He defends the title against names like Carmelo Hayes, Aleister Black, The Miz, Ilya Dragunov, and promises that the night he loses this title, it'll be his last match in the WWE. With each successful defense, the legend of Jericho's final reign grows. The crowd chants his name louder with every entrance. Wrestlers from across the industry praise his performances on social media. But all good things must come to an end. In early 2027, Jericho drops his title to a hungry newcomer like Obafemi, or drops it back to Dirty Dom, who gets the privilege of forever being known as the man who retired Chris Jericho. 2 months later at WrestleMania 43, Chris Jericho is inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and as the crowd chants for Y2J one last time, the career of Chris Jericho comes to an end, but his legacy as the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time will live forever.